Faith calls for more than a practicality. And there is something to be said for we can't guarantee security in our vocations.
I would love to continue brainstorming and processing what it looks like to say, a man is discerning the priesthood. Are you discerning parish life? And this is what that means. Are you discerning missionary life, which is also parish life, but in a different way?
If you're entering into a vocation, if you're entering into a call from God, looking for an earthly security, that's just not necessarily going to be there.
That's the conversion that we all need to be going through every day, if possible.
Glory to Jesus Christ. It's Jelly. I'm glad to welcome you to the What God Is Not podcast, where you can join Father Michael O'Loughlin and my godmother, Mother Natalia.
Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
Boistinu. My little ones are trained now to say Boistinu Voskrese for Christos Voskrese, the Church Slavonic. And they love it, and they're saying it. I'm like, I always feel like when I was in Denver and we had the Montessori school and the kids would come over during the Paschal season, I think I've shared this before, and I've gotten myself in trouble before, but just because they were like 3 to 5 year olds and I had like 23 to 5 year olds praying first hour, so it's like, what are you going to do with that many little kids, their teachers that were there. So I would just sing Christ is risen. Like I'd end a psalm and sing Christ is risen, then start the next psalm and sing Christ is risen 3 times, just because they all knew Christ is risen.
So
and they'd stomp and they would sing at the top of their voice. And then we'd chant another song and we'd sing Christ is risen again. It wasn't in the rubrics, but it kept little 3 to 5 year olds entertained and engaged, not entertained. Who cares about being entertained during prayer, but engaged in the prayer because we were praying a prayer.
That's so sweet. I don't think you've ever shared that because I don't remember hearing that. That's fun.
You're not scandalized? I probably didn't share it because I thought you'd be scandalized by me changing the rubrics of the liturgy.
I probably would have been a couple of years ago. What I was gonna? Oh, how many of the languages do you know? Let's do this.
Oh, I don't. I've known them all at some point, but every year it just goes. So Bishop Artur, we had a Zoom meeting last night, and he just went off on them. What's the Arabic?
Al-Masiyakam.
And then Hakam Kam, right?
Yeah, Hakam Kam.
Okay.
That's good.
So see, if somebody begins it, I usually got it. What's the Spanish?
Cristo ha resucitado. Yeah.
A verdad resucitado. We actually have that. Is that close? No? A verdad.
It's close. It's
no.
close.
Okay.
It's either verdaderamente ha resucitado or en verdad.
Okay.
Not a verdad. En verdad. Like in truth, he is risen.
In truth, en verdad. Okay. We actually have the Spanish in our bulletin this week. I sent my bulletin.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a verdad.
A bunch of them. And I just said I put one in every week, or maybe they even did it themselves. I just realized I got a letter from...
would be like truly.
Okay. I see.
I got
a letter from Pauline Meert that came in the mail.
Aww.
Sorry, I'm not going to open it. Shout out to Pauline Meert.
Thank you.
Thank you for sending me a letter. It's probably hate mail, but that's okay.
Do you know what? I can share a story from one of your kids' homilies that I was thinking of last time we recorded.
Hate mail, by the way. Okay.
But if you want to just move into your topic, we can.
Go ahead if it's on your mind.
Okay, because you were talking about kids' homilies last time, and I was thinking of my favorite kids' homily that you gave was you were talking about our tendency towards sin ever since the fall. Okay. And you said, you're talking to the kids and you say, so for example, if there are 2 plates on a cookie, you want to take the bigger cookie and give your brother the smaller cookie. And you want to do that because of this thing that happened all those years ago. And But that's not fair, right? That you would have to struggle with this because of what these two people did years and years and years and years and years ago. And then you said, but if you think about it, it is fair because, and one of the kids goes, because we get the bigger cookie. And what's funny is, I don't even remember actually the point of the homily and why you were saying it is fair that we should have to struggle. Okay. I know, but all I remember is that kid being like, "But it is fair because we get the bigger cookie." It's like that was not the point.
I did share last time, right, about the kids with the commenting on why she's had 5 wives, or
yes,
why
that's
she's
what
had
made
5
me.
husbands. Okay,
Yeah, that's what made me think of it.
Nice.
So I was thinking of that last episode, and then I was like, I can't bring that into this because it was not in banter and it just would have totally, but I was like, I want to share it at some point. So
one of my favorite kids' homily moments, one of my favorites was here when I said something about, I was sitting and I said, I was just talking about sin or messing up, whatever. I said, because, like, for instance, your pastor is a total mess. And this one, like, brother goes, you are a total mess. Just laughing. Oh my gosh. I don't think he meant it like that. I thought you were going to say she started defending you. No, not the exact opposite. Like, I think it was a little boy. I think he was like trying to, like, he was laughing at the self-deprecation, but it like the way he accented it was like, you are a total mess. Like, not like you're a total mess. That's a funny thing to say. But like, he's like, you are a total mess. And I mean, the whole congregation just burst out laughing. I was like, that was perfect.
That's amazing.
The honesty of the 4-year-olds. Okay. Mark the time. We will. So this is. I want our topic today. I want some feedback from you. This is an honest. I'm trying to process something for my work in the eparchy, and I would love your feedback because I love and trust you, and also because you are a monastic, and also because you're a celibate, and also you're also a vocations director. So. That's one thing we have our ministries in common. So this does not involve your world of vocations. It certainly involves mine. So Mother Natalia is the vocations director for Christ the Bridegroom Monastery. I was the vocations director for the Eparchy of Phoenix. Now I am. By the way, I believe I've been sharing this with nuance.
I believe.
You're gonna get a suit. I believe I was the vocations director at the time that we accepted Bishop Artur into the eparchy as a seminarian. I know, isn't that cool?
I think you were. I think that's right.
I think I was because he's been a priest now 10 years, and that would have meant we brought him in at about 12, 13 years ago, and I had to do the math, but I've been a priest 20 years, so I bet I was. Okay.
You have not been a priest 20 years. Don't exaggerate. In 4 days, you will have been 4 days.
A priest for 20 years. Is it Sunday?
Yeah.
Right? I think it's Sunday. Yeah. Well, you got.
It's Sunday.
Thank you for remembering, Mother.
May 25th. It's also your parents' 50th anniversary.
50th anniversary on that same day. Yes, it's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day, and then actually, it's not going to be a good day.
It's also Father Travis's birthday, and
Padre Pio's
Little Mary
birthday.
Link.
Oh, okay. And who else? It's also.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's also. Is it Jim Martini's birthday? I'm horrible with these things. I'm not so good with these. Okay. Anyway, moving on. So vocations work. So this all happened because a priest friend of mine who has always been delightfully questioning to a nearly critical way, but we were friends, so he knows, even though he's being critical, he's doing it because we're friends. And he does not understand most things about our Byzantine church. He's a Roman Catholic priest. Does not understand most things, does not like most things about the Byzantine Catholic Church. Just very, very Western, very, very Roman. And so whenever we're together, he questions things. I heard this. Why do you do this? But the way he pushes, like, trying to cause, me to really think and not just give some surface answer. This most recent time we were chatting, he was going off on the married priesthood, and he I was trying to explain to him, this is our ancient and venerable tradition. When taken to its most perfect form, you have pastors that are married priests and monastics who are celibates. And if you discern a celibate vocation, if you're accepted into a monastery, that's the most proper place for a celibate vocation within the authentic Byzantine Catholic Church. Now, because of rules from Rome that were incredibly destructive, I believe, and because of other things, that's just not the way we live out our life. So we have taken on what could be interpreted as a very Latin understanding of the celibate priesthood. Namely, most priests until recently, most priests in our eparchies were celibate priests, and they even the understanding of celibacy and the celibate priesthood. We had to go to the Romans to understand it because that we didn't really have those concepts in the East. But I've been doing a little bit more research.
I think it was only in 2014 that Rome lifted and allowed us to ordain married men. Is that
2014,
true?
2015, 2016, something like that. Yeah, it was only in the past 10 years. So there definitely was most priests, including when I began my discernment, most priests had to adopt a more Roman Catholic understanding of the life of the celibate priesthood. Now, that being said, this same priest told me that until the late 50s, it was most Roman Catholic priests, almost all the Roman Catholic priests who were celibate lived in community, in a rectory. The rectories, if you go to these old Catholic cities, you see these rectories and they always have 3 to 4 bedrooms in them. You know, they were built to have a pastor and then a few assistants in the parish. So it really, the life that we live now, that most celibate priests, Roman and Byzantine, the life we live now of just assuming that you're going to live alone for your whole life and you're going to live in a rectory by yourself for your whole life is unusual. Now, here in LA, the parishes near me have at least 2 priests in each rectory, which is great. You know, I'm very glad they have that community. But basically, this priest, when he was kind of pushing back on me on this idea of the Eastern understanding of married priesthood and parishes, he was kind of bringing up very practical things. You know, how do you guys handle finances? You know, what happens if, and I kind of mentioned this too, what happens if a man has a wife and, 5 kids, 6, 7 kids, and none of them they're not independently wealthy. They gave their life to this ministry, say that neither of their families have money, and then all of a sudden the priest dies tragically. Like the wife and the kids, they have nowhere to live because they were living in a rectory. They what if they didn't have life insurance? What if they were giving everything and just assuming, and then all of a sudden, is she homeless? These are
you
very
could say
real.
This about missionaries too, though.
This is exactly where I'm getting. I'm getting. So in other words, no, it's okay. It's okay. So she would be homeless, right? So there's a need to understand and to process this better, because I don't want that reality, if that ever happens tragically, to catch us off guard. So I know that bishops doing this, we have pensions. I don't know if the pension goes to the wife. I'm not sure. I'm not on that committee, thank God. But there's various things. But do you really think? Because I don't. Do you really think priests think through that when they're in formation? Do they really think that if I die, what happens to my wife?
No, because when a priest is in formation, when any person is at that stage in their life, they're not even considering the fact that they might die.
Right, but I don't. I think that it's. I don't even think that's a consideration. I don't think they've ever thought and said, "What if I die? What happens to my wife and kids?" Another priest needs that rectory. Another priest and his family are going to take over that parish. Whatever it may be. So there's something. This either has to be the eparchies, and I do this as a Vocations on the committee now. We tell these men, the church cannot afford, because of our small parish sizes, and Americans don't like to tithe, too much. Like our parishes can't afford to support you in these ways, So you may need to talk to other married priests. You may need to consider getting another job. You may need to consider your wife getting some job that she can have and still fulfill all her roles. All these things. So these things are the things that I think, as a vocations director and within our eparchies, we should be explicit about and help them out with. So this priest was very legitimately saying, "This is ridiculous. You can't do that. You can't. That's no way to run an eparchy. That's no way to run a church. Is to have these married priests be so vulnerable to their current situation, And it got me thinking. And then he said, "So why don't you just tell the priests, if you're going to be a priest for our eparchy, we're missionaries. Like, that's what we are. This is not you're probably looking to major Greek archdioceses and eparchies, major Russian, Antiochian, like you're looking at these situations where these priests get paid a lot more than we do, in general. But you're following all these things online. You're seeing all these situations online, and then you're expecting that's how it is with our tiny little, when we're a missionary eparchy, the Eparchy of Phoenix. I think almost all of our eparchies are missionary eparchies. We all get money from the Home Missions Appeal. So, in other words, this is, what I'm thinking of is just in the context of vocations. I'm trying to process a way that it can work that if you're discerning priesthood, just say for the Eparchy of Phoenix, from my eparchy, we actually recruit vocations, if you can say that word, of course, assist men in discerning. We assist men in discerning. If you're discerning celibacy, it's not completely accurate historically, but we are a missionary eparchy, so we need exceptions, and every vocation is going to have exceptions to this ideal rule that in history, say in the 18th century, the Eastern Christian Church was able to do. That isn't the case right now, and we may have 3 or 4 parishes that can afford to support a priest and have him live relatively comfortably, so that this is a typical situation where the priest only needs to be a pastor and does not have a second job. That they can have a large enough house with a yard to have multiple kids and have the kids live as normal American kids, in this situation like this. Let's say that the priest family is living similar to the way that his parishioners are living. That'd be the ideal, right? The size of the house and the lifestyle, the culture that the priest is living in is similar to his people. He understands them then, etc. That I imagine would be the ideal. But that's not what we have to offer in our eparchy. Again, we may have a few parishes that could do that, but we will actively say we need celibate vocations. That I don't think our church has ever said that. We need celibate vocations because we are a missionary eparchy. If we were not, it wouldn't. If we had a monastery near every city, we wouldn't need celibate vocations. So go be a monk, right? Go be a monk. Go join the monastery, live in community with your brothers, go become holy. If you're married, we have parishes for you, and we'll put you in a parish, and you'll live a good life of sacrificial ministry, but in the parish context. But since we are not doing that well with this right now, there's always these questions for married priests and celibate priests. Do we start as a vocations office recruiting and just helping men discern, and doing it in the context of, young man, do you understand that you are discerning the priesthood in a missionary situation, a missionary culture in our United States, a missionary eparchy that cannot pay, that cannot guarantee you that you're going to have your financial needs met? Like, do you understand that? And so what we need is missionary priests, both married and celibate, but especially if you're discerning celibacy, don't think that you're going to be like your Roman Catholic priest brothers. You're not. Roman Catholic priests generally live quite comfortably. They have even their food paid for. We don't, right? Yeah. Again, in general. So you understand you're going to be living differently. So don't expect that. When someone says, "What are you discerning?" you say missionary priesthood. That's what I'm discerning, the missionary priesthood. Well, what does your eparchy have? A mission. So if you're a married man, I wish our eparchy could say you're going to get paid more than a celibate man, because the celibate men in our eparchy are missionary priests. And so they understand they're going to get paid less. So therefore we can pay married priests more. Guess what? If you're a married man, we hope that you're going to be a little more stable. So you can actually send your kids to a Catholic school. If you get a job, the wife or you get a job in the city, you can keep that job for a while. If you're celibate, you're a missionary. You're going to get moved more than a married priest. You're going to be in a poorer parish than a married priest. You're going to have, in a sense, a different, more active role of evangelization and going out to grow your parish. If there's a parish that's really struggling, like it's shrinking, it's dying, they get a missionary priest. And so there's almost like these different categories with pay, expectations, roles, even roles in the eparchy, so that what are you discerning? What are you discerning? And can the eparchy, of course, it's totally up to the bishop, but can the eparchy handle, since we have so many different parishes and different situations and different financial situations, different cultural situations, different situations with numbers and growth, we have different priests and different vocations, if you will, that can handle those different situations. And that's understood during their discernment.
Yeah, I really love the concept of it. Like implementation, I don't know, but as as an ideal, I really love the concept of it. And I think because some people are even just like called to greater poverty than others, we're all called to poverty universally, but some people are called to a greater level of poverty than others. Some people can live in greater poverty than others, like just have less obligations and things like that. This is something, it's interesting because this is something that you and I have even often talked about in direction. It sounds a little bit different, but it's going to come back. It's never actually bothered me. Our monastery has, I think our monastery has a pretty healthy view of like splitting up obediences, basically splitting up like the workload of the monastery. It's not a matter of how do we split it up such that everyone has an even amount of work. It's a matter of what is the work that needs to be done and who is able to do it. Like as far as competency in the actual task, but also as far as physical stamina and health and time in their schedule and things like that. I often, all of the nuns really, like often have to leave dinner dishes early because we have a spiritual direction with someone. And that often means that the two dokomoi are left alone in the kitchen doing the dishes, which was difficult for me to accept at first because I feel guilty because of our Western mindset, Western meaning like Western world, not Western Catholic, because of our American mindset of fairness. It was difficult for me at first because I'm like, that's not fair. They have to do more dishes than me. But like, I'm also doing a work, giving spiritual direction is one of my obediences. And so my work looks different from them at that time of the day. And their work is to do the dishes at that moment. And my work is to go be with this directee, and we've really done, I think, a good job, especially over these last couple of years, of shifting to this mindset in the monastery of like, okay, this work needs done. Who's able to do it? It's not who has more or who has less or how can we divide things evenly. It's really looking at what people feel able to do. And I think that's actually the much healthier, more Christian way to live. And that's what you're describing.
Yeah, absolutely. On an eparchial level.
On an eparchial level to do that. And I think that's just beautiful. It reminds me, I've brought this up many times, but it's just so moving to me. When I was at a simple house of Saints Francis and Alphonsus, and we each got a monthly stipend of $200. And then, but we had room and board. We were given a certain amount of, a very small amount for food each week. And then, but anyways, it was, I've talked about this before, but I was moved by the fact that they practiced voluntary poverty, not just amongst the volunteers, which many organizations do, but also voluntary corporate poverty. So a simple house, as a ministry, we were never allowed to have more than, I think, 2 or 3 months worth of bills in the bank account at any one time. So if people were particularly generous with donations in a month, we were particularly generous with our ministry in that month financially. We tried to always be generous, but, and there were times when we were there that we would have to come together and be like, guys, we don't have, like, we're out of money. And there would have to be a discussion of like, who's able to not take their full $200, and also, I mean, we would look at other things like, is there anything that could be cut that we're doing this month? But then it came to, people being like, I don't need a full 200 this month or whatever. And I think that's just like a beautiful way to live. And it is very much like a missionary spirit. And I understand from a practical point of view what this priest is saying and what he's asking. And that I am a very practical person, usually. But faith calls for more than a practicality. And there is something to be said for, we can't guarantee security in our vocations. And like, if you're entering into a vocation, if you're entering into a call from God, looking for an earthly security, that's just not necessarily going to be there.
But that's
again that Western mindset.
Yeah.
I agree. That's where I'm going with this, because in the Western mindset, that is what we're told, right? Like, we need security. We need a 401k. I was thinking of a 5K and a 501c3.
Yeah.
A 401k and like all of these things. And you need a retirement plan. You need a, whatever. But we're also told about like the man building the extra barns. But like, this is so driven into us in our society right now and growing up and in our adult lives. And like, this is what you spend your entire childhood preparing for college. You spend all of college preparing for a job. And then you spend that job trying to get security for when you retire. And then you retire, and like, how many people don't even make it to retirement? And then it's like, well, shoot, that's what you spent your whole life doing. But because that's what's so driven into us, like, we need to be countering that in our preaching, in how we're forming people, in how we're, because what I'm thinking of, this might sound idealistic, because it is, and it might sound naive, and maybe it is, but I really believe this. Not all of our parishes are thriving. Maybe even not many of our parishes are thriving. But I have confidence that if, say, maybe I shouldn't even name a name, but if one of the married priests that I know who has like 5 kids, if he were to suddenly die and his wife has no way of supporting herself or the children, I wholeheartedly believe that if the bishops were to reach out to their parishes and explain the situation and say, we need help, we need support, I know enough parishes that we have that would help that woman get on her feet. And I don't think that's just naive. And that can't be like, I don't mean that we have enough parishes that would like support a married priest and their family consistently. But if there was an emergency like that and some sort of tragic accident, like, and the reason I think this is, it does happen with like, in the smaller ways, in a lot of our parishes, this is the case, you know, where someone has a baby and there's a meal train for the next 2 months. And like when something, in a moment of crisis, I really think that our church is able to come together. Not that having a baby is a crisis. That's not what I mean. But like in a moment of great need. And
I think the people, yes. I think we would our parishes would reach out to the people. And again, we should probably have a fund. I know this is kind of go against what you're saying, but like we should probably have an eparchial fund for emergencies like this. Maybe we do. Things like this where people can donate to an emergency fund or a situation like that, just so that there's a little bit, as a member of the eparchy would just say, it would make me feel better if there was something kind of ready to go. And then we could say, we have this emergency fund, we're going to need a lot more in it. We're going to need, I mean, my gosh, do they want to put their kids through college? How much can we give, this single mother of 7, to get her, like, what does that even look like, So anyway, but having a fund and having some discernment and have, even giving her a place to live and things like that would obviously be good. But I guess that because I agree with you, I think that would happen. It would happen. I know that people would come together for that. But I guess my question, the thing I was inspired by my friend was that I don't think that we as a vocations office or as an eparchy, we don't actually, I don't know, I'm going to use it improperly again, but the word recruit missionary priests who are willing to really sacrifice. I think that most of our men who discern celibacy still assume, because that's how most of our priests are, they live, celibate priests live pretty well, in their rectories and in their life, and they don't. I mean, I remember years ago, and again, I think this would have to be kind of a generational thing. We'd have to start doing it now, and then like we're not going to make any of our celibate priests, live a missionary life that they did not discern. They discern the life that they're living. So, but when men are discerning now, we tell them, by the way, you're going to live, if you discern this, you're going to live differently than even your brother celibates in this eparchy. You're the beginning of a new world of missionary celibate priests in our eparchy that are going to get paid less and that are going to get moved more and that are going to have different expectations. Might I even say, and this is why I mentioned in the beginning that I'm saying this because you're a monastic, might there be a way of saying, missionary priests are expected to live a certain aggregate or semi-monastic life that is proper to celibates. And, there's many priests who are going to listen to this and tell me, the celibate priesthood is not a semi-monastic priesthood. It's a whole different world. And, so I'm not going to force that upon that. They may be right. I think they probably are right. Whether to change or not, I don't know. But at least to have it be a normal thing where if you are a celibate priest, a celibate missionary priest, it's normal to have a certain aggregate or semi-monastic tie to a monastery so that you are guided. More prayer is expected of you, more monastic style prayer is expected of you. So, to put it these ways.
if you're the spiritual leader of your people, you better be praying.
Well, yeah, but I think it's different though for a married man and a celibate man who are both the spiritual leaders of their people.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
But for a married person, prayer looks different. Like it's not that the married priest is not praying; it's that he's praying through his service to his family.
Right. But going back to it, until whatever, maybe it was a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, but there was different prayer in cathedrals as there were in monasteries, and now they've been kind of combined. But I think that's what that came from. It was the expectation was different if you go to a monastery than if you go to a parish. Sure. And I think like that can kind of be the way. Married men are expected to their parishes have Sunday matins and vespers, but not necessarily every day. Where a celibate is expected to have some sort of daily prayer, depending on his parish situations. I have 2 parishes, so it's impossible for me. But there's some sort of expectation or some of the day off to have morning and evening prayer, a more semi-monastic situation, or at least certainly for himself to do that, Yeah. So again, but I guess the whole point I'm saying is I would love to continue brainstorming and processing what it looks like to say, a man is discerning the priesthood. Are you discerning parish life? And this is what that means. Are you discerning missionary life, which is also parish life, but in a different way? And actually actively recruit men to say, you're hearing a lot of stuff that parish priests should not be celibate. I've even said that myself. That is the tradition. But there is a way of saying that it is unusual, and therefore we need to do it with the fear of God, and therefore we need to do it with great oversight and understanding the supernatural, exceptional quality of this. But we need missionary priests. And for those discerning celibacy, we are saying it is good to have celibate priests leading parishes in our eparchy because we're in a missionary phase. Hopefully we will not need that anymore. The day may come when we don't need local missionaries, when our parishes are just parishes. And when a man discerns missionary priesthood, he's a missionary to a foreign country or to a part of the United States where there are no parishes, But anyway, I didn't want to just take his criticism as criticism, but I want to say, is there actually anything helpful in what he's saying that we could actually use in our current context? I think his viewing our eparchy, probably from the outside, even in a critical way, what can be one of the voices that we listen to when it comes to the work of our eparchy. No, not only those voices, because they don't know the inner workings, but one of the voices that could actually be helpful. And I think there are men, in this case, who would desire that.
Yeah, and I think the missionary approach is the right answer to it, because I think the most helpful thing of this priest's criticism, your friend's criticism, I think the most helpful thing is it points out a lot of, again, just like the mindset of the Western world that I think we as a church need to be speaking into, calling out the missionaries and asking, like, do you want to be a missionary? Do you feel called to be a missionary? Because the missionaries, like, where are you looking for your stability, I guess would be my question
I
for
have
those who are discerning.
I've seen it with priests that there is a resistance, and I've seen it multiple times, a resistance to obedience and a resistance to being stretched, especially if you've served in a more agreeable situation, and then you're asked to do something else. But anyway, these priests didn't discern that. They discerned what was shown to them. It's only going forward that we say, you can't complain about a hard life. This is what we told you it was going to be, and it's going to be hard. We all live hard lives. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be different than your brother priests. You're going to live a harder life than your brother priests, and that's what you decided to discern and to listen to God's will for.
Yeah, well, and I think I'm often lacking in gentleness, and I can be very harsh, often. When I see someone else being harsh, suddenly, like, the gentleness comes out in me, and I feel, like, defensive of the person who's experiencing the harshness, even though if I had said it, like, if the other person hadn't said it, maybe I would have said the harsh thing. But then suddenly when someone says it, I'm like, but what about this? So anyways, this happened to me a few years ago, almost the same situation that you're describing, of, a bishop was asking his priest to do, like, not asking, he was, like, very strongly saying that his priest needed to change to basically their entire way of life, to be more prayerful, to be more this, that, and the other, like, good things is my point. He was calling for these priests to be doing good things. And there was a lot of kickback, and there was a lot of priests who were upset and who were pushing back and who did not want to, and at the time that this was happening, people said to me, you know, like, who do these priests think, like, they're supposed to be obedient, and the bishop is telling them to pray, and this is a good thing, and he's asking these good things of them, and so on and so forth. Which again, like, maybe I would have been that person if this person hadn't said it first. But my response was, yes, of course. But we also have to consider, like, some of these priests have been a priest for like 20 or 30 years, and this has never been asked of them. And so it's suddenly being demanded, and just like, imagine being on the receiving end of that, of like, suddenly after 30 years of priesthood, you have to like totally change this. And all these young guys are being upheld as the example, you know, like, it's just like, it's really difficult. And is that pride? Absolutely. Are we all prideful? Absolutely. And so, like, at least understand where that's coming from. And so I think you're right that it's how we need to form going forward. But also remembering just pastorally that as any sort of formation that we're trying to do among people who have been living away for a certain amount of time or whatever, like, we have to do that with gentleness and with compassion and all of that, of like, understanding that it's hard to change when you've been set in this way of living for so long. And And
it's really good for priests and pastors to, I think, experience that tension, because that's what we do to our people if we take over a new parish. You know, they've been living this parish life with these things. And for instance, in my situation, they've had pews their whole life. And now all of a sudden the priest is saying, wouldn't you rather do prostrations? You know, wouldn't you rather be able to kneel in this way? And wouldn't you rather be able to move around a little bit more freely? And the pushback is totally understandable. It's not that they're, you know, anti-tradition. It's that we've always had pews. You know, this is how that's how, when I walk into the church, I you know, take a breath and, you know, there's a nostalgia there. There's a peace there. I've experienced God here so many times. I've met beautiful people here so many times. And now Father's changing this thing, you know, which I believe is, of course, for good, because that's what I've done. But it is hard, and it is hard for us to change our ways. But that's metanoia, you know, that's the conversion that we all need to be going through every day, if possible.
I think I might use that for the next episode. So we can. Okay.
Let's finish this up then, and so we can do another short one. Nice. Sorry, Abby, and all those who don't like short episodes. We're going to do two short episodes. So you're going to get over.
Father Michael and I both, for June, our calendars are totally insane. Yes. And so we're having to just schedule a bunch. Record a bunch ahead of time. So.
But those of you that have been used to your whole life having hour-long What God Is Not episodes, you're going to have to have a little conversion and understand there's going to be short ones, and there's probably going to be a few episodes where it's not Mother and I together, but with other guests and things like that, so we can handle the situation, and it'll make you holier, dear listeners. So
we can hope. All right, can you? You want to do the spiel? Probably.
Nope, I don't. I don't want to do the spiel.
Okay, great. Then can you just give us a
short
blessing?
Episodes. We're going to sacrifice it, yes.
Oh, wait, but we should at least do prayer intentions.
Okay.
Yeah, we should do prayer intentions.
So it's on me, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to pray for one priest. I'm going to ask you just to pray for our married priests in our eparchy who have taken on such an immense risk. I don't feel so bad for the celibates, but actually, you know, one thing before I pray, I just want to say one thing. I want to say is that I do think it's good. It's a good thing for you and I as celibates to be talking about this, but we also need. We do, and because the whole topic was on celibacy, it was on celibate priests should be missionaries. But when it comes to married priests sacrificing and married priests getting paid less and married priests having these expectations and taking these risks, it is good to have married priests talk into this. So, you know, it's easy enough for us celibates to say these things, but I don't think it's wrong for us to do it. because especially you who are monastic and a prophet in that way, and I'm a pastor and a prophet in that way, so that there is a legitimacy to our speaking into this, but it would be good to have some of the practical concerns and even the more of a lived understanding of these realities to be talked about by a married priest or even a married family, a couple that understands those practical things well.
I also would add that this wasn't at all touched on in this episode, but this is part of why it's extremely important for the woman to be involved in the discernment of priesthood for the married priest. Like, it's not about, well, I'm called to the married priesthood, so you're along for the ride. That very much needs to be a mutual discernment because she needs to also know the risk of what's happening, as opposed to just like he's ordained and suddenly she finds out, wait, the eparchy's not supporting this, that, and the other. And like, it's just like they both need to know what they're getting into and to seriously discern, is the Lord asking these particular sacrifices of me?
Absolutely, discernment and formation. I think the wives, as much as they can, be involved in the formation, so that there's a shared understanding of what in the formation is good and what it means to actually be a priest living in this day and age in this country and in this situation. So yeah, okay. I will just ask you to please
prayers for
married priests, especially in our eparchy, just that we do support them with other things like we mentioned financially or something like that, but also with prayer in their ministry that they, I'm sure, could use.
And I will ask for prayers for, I was going to just be snarky and say, then I'll ask for prayers for the celibate priests. But actually, I think I want to ask for prayers for our retired priests, because my heart goes out to them a lot in this as well, especially those who honestly, the priests who would have loved the married priesthood, and it came far after they were ordained. Actually, yeah, eternal memory. Father John Kachuba, who I've talked about before, I'm so moved by this in him. Is he, even as a priest? So after his ordination, he spent so much fighting for the reinstitution of the married priesthood in the East, knowing that he would never have that. And I was always really moved by that, that he was like, I want this for the priests who come after me, even though it wasn't allowed for me. And I was always really moved by that. So anyways, prayers for our retired priests who have so beautifully served our eparchies. And yeah. So,
amen.
I think that's it. All right.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, have mercy on you. May our Lord allow you to live in this missionary world, in this missionary part of the kingdom. When we get to heaven, we will rest truly and completely in our theosis, our union with God. But in this world, we are all missionaries. We are all called to not live in this world as if this was our world. This is not our world. We are not citizens of this world. We are citizens of the next, and that is our kingdom, and that is our peace. May we all have a missionary spirit in this world, and may we all have the humility to say that we're not strong enough to do that. May we all have the ability to receive the grace to do that in a heroic way when God asks. And may we also successfully and gratefully and fully instill that in our children, so that they may also understand this culture and have the strength that comes from God to carry out a life of missionary work, even in this world and while always in this world. May the Lord bless you in all of this and grant you what you need, especially the salvation of your soul. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Love you, Mother.
Love you too.